What's up, my alphas? Welcome to Leading the Pack. I'm your host, Dom Clegg, mental performance coach and former football coach dedicated to turning your mindset into your ultimate weapon and helping you become the alpha of your life. Now it's time to level up and lead your pack. Let's attack this work together. I'm really excited. I have Jon Harris with me here today. He's become a great friend and mentor. Jon is a former collegiate lacrosse player. He played at the University of St. Thomas. He seamlessly transitioned into his role as a assistant lacrosse coach eventually, and is now also a mental performance coach. He collaborates with high school, colleges, and he actually works with his alma mater, St. Thomas. He also works with different business organizations. He focuses on cultivating leadership, purpose, and that continuous performance that we talk about being an alpha. He is also a Ben Newman certified coach, and he is a speaker for the Ben Newman companies. Jon likes to integrate mental toughness and high performance strategies into his coaching philosophy. His approach emphasizes intentionality, discipline, and relentless pursuit of excellence. Jon is also, if that's not enough for you guys, he is also a podcast host of Next Level Podcast, and he's also one of our leaders for the Next Level Coaches webinar series that we run. So, Jon, thanks for joining.
I appreciate that, and thanks for. I got to make sure I get the recording of that, my bio, because you sometimes and you're the same way, right? You forget about all the stuff that you do that's gotten you where you are today, and I think one thing as people listen to this is that's 30 years of effort and work behind all of that, right? So these things don't happen by accident; they're intentional. They take time and mistakes and scars to build up a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I go through that all the time. That's why I have I call her the alpha of my life, I guess, on
Yeah.
top of me. She helps me understand all the small victories that I forget about and all the things I've accomplished because I'm always similar to you. It's always about the next thing, the next level. What can I get to next? And I haven't done enough because I haven't hit that next level. And I think that's something cool that we can even talk about today. But yeah, just understanding the small victories and celebrating those and not forgetting, kind of like what I talked about on my last episode with Ian of remembering, right? And noticing and understanding that rinse method. But really cool. Jon, I wanted to start off with, since you are a collegiate athlete like myself, the idea of transitioning from being a college lacrosse player and all the mental and mindset work that you do today. How was that transition, and how has being a college athlete helped you today?
Yeah, I think that the toughest thing was finding what to compete against when no one else is keeping score. And that's a lot of that has to do with kind of my origin story post in my post collegiate career was once I didn't have the benchmark of sports, a lot of things started to fall apart in my life, but physically, mentally, financially, relationship wise, because that was my whole identity. My whole identity for as long as I can remember was athlete. And as you know, there's a very small percentage of us athletes that go pro, right? So like even the whole like NCAA commercials that they have now is 98% of us go pro in something else other than sports, right? So it's cliche, but it's significant because once that goes away, I had a really hard time of like figuring out what to do with myself and with my free time, and I found myself in unhealthy habits like drinking too much and kind of like woe is me, and it took kind of hitting rock bottom where I was gained a bunch of weight because if I wasn't playing a sport, why keep in shape, right? So put on a bunch of weight, drinking too much. I was married and I had a young child like right out of school, and my wife was kind of like, "Hey, I'm not happy. Like you need to get your shit together, or I'm out." And so it took kind of being in that low point and really struggling with my own identity and whether or not I even deserve to exist on this planet to then commit to improvement. And really what I did was say, I'm gonna go run a marathon. And so I had to find a way to compete. Like really for me, it was this interesting need to have a scoreboard. And since then, I mean, that was 15 years ago. Since then, I've found other ways to compete with myself, to compete with my standard, to put my energy into positive places to drive myself forward. But that transition was super hard. And initially, I had to manufacture my own scoreboard to get me out of the depths of where I was. And for me, it was running a marathon. And the funny part about that is one of my collegiate teammates, he was like, "Hey, I want to run a marathon. Do it with me." And I was like, "I fucking hate running, but I'll," because it's, if you're an athlete, typically the historical method of punishment in sports is running. Your football, you're running, killers, basketball, lacrosse, whatever it is, right? So I'm like, all right, but I got to do something. I got to figure something out. And so I poured all my energy into running a marathon. 2 weeks into training, he tweaks his MCL and he's out. So now I'm by myself. And I'll never forget one of my first training runs. It was just a 2 mile run, pouring down rain. It was around this time. It was early April, pouring down rain. And I'm like, I committed to running this marathon. And if I don't start running today, I'll never be. October was the marathon. I'm training in April to get ready. And it was it was 11-minute miles. And I just ran up this street for a mile and back. And I was like, man, that sucked. But I felt great afterwards. And I was like, this is what momentum feels like. This is what it feels like again to have a purpose and have something to focus on. So that was that life transition that was there. And then eventually all the time I was still coaching and stuff. So I right when I graduated, I started coaching too. But it wasn't like, it wasn't as fulfilling, and I couldn't really figure out why. So it was really that finding that purpose to pull me forward and drive me. And kind of, it's been a continuous development of raising the bar since then. Like we talked about, what's that next level that I can focus on.
Absolutely. I think that I would say most athletes struggle with this once they have to be done with their career. I mean, like Tom Brady tried to play until he was 100, and then he realized he could go get $100 million contract to be a broadcaster. So, but I think the idea of like that isn't your identity is so
Mm.
hard to pull
Yep.
away from, because that's what you've been doing, or most of us have been doing since we were 5, 6. And so that's all you've ever known, is that I'm an athlete and I do this thing called school, right? It's just there in order for me to be an athlete. And I think being able to find those competitions or finding those next levels to compete with yourself are crucial for an athlete to keep moving forward. And that next level could be in your financial, maybe you're a financial advisor. And so you want to get that next level of, I'm going to compete with everybody in my firm. Or maybe it's, I'm going to be the best teacher at my school, or whatever it is. But you have to find those. They're not given to you like in sports where you have the games coming up to compete against someone.
And professionally, it's sometimes hard and or dangerous to find that competition within your own choosing profession, right? Because like a lot of former athletes go into sales, and they take that same methodology of competition into sales, and it's me versus you, versus the transition that I took, and that I feel is typically the most healthy, is me versus me. And so I had to find what was awesome about running. And I think a lot of during that period of time, so this is like 2007, 8, 9, 10, around that period. If you go back and look at participation in half marathons, and like 10-mile run, they exploded because folks were like, this is a healthy social pastime, but also is like, all I need is me. I need a flat surface and some tennis shoes, and like that's all that I need to go do this. And so a lot of former athletes and a lot of kids that I've worked with over the years who are now a little bit older, or people who graduated around and played other sports, like they tend to get in, and now it's like either like high rocks or CrossFit or DECA, Spartan races, whatever, like these competitive personal activities where there's a clock, and maybe there is some other people, but it's really about me and kind of beating the yesterday's version of me. And that was then really healthy for me professionally, because instead of competing with the other people in the office, and I wasn't at the time, I wasn't in sales. I would go on to get into a sales role later in life, but it was like I was only focused on being a new, better version of me. And I didn't know exactly, like I didn't have the framework, I didn't have the phraseology, and I didn't have the, and that's what eventually would I would find John Gordon and Maxwell and Zig Ziglar and like these guys. And I was like, oh, that's what, like that's the stuff I'm searching for, which would eventually find my way to Ben Newman and then really understand these concepts, which now have helped me create kind of my own concepts and sought me to get into the training and get into the frameworks to then coach others and make impact. But that was kind of a 10-year journey of assembling these pieces and parts, which really were all grounded in the stuff I was doing as an athlete from high school beyond, right? Like, so this stuff builds on each other, but when you don't know what to call it, it's kind of like when you step into the ocean, the waves are moving, right? You're like, I can feel it, but I don't know what causes it, right? I don't know that like gravity and and there's these forces behind it. So you like, you don't, it's there, but you don't know what makes it happen. That's kind of how I felt as I was, had all these ideas rattling around in my head, and I'd be writing things down in journals, and I'm like listening and taking notes and kind of putting it together, but I didn't have a way to formulate it into a repeatable, sustainable process. And really it was this first marathon that broke it through, because you had to have a training plan. You had to have like all these pieces and parts to get to that end goal. And then what was funny though, is that after I finished the marathon, the first thing I'm thinking is like, well, what's next? Like, and so we can get into this later, but it's just a kind of an anecdotal direction around goal setting. And again, it's like, now what? Like, is it, and that's why a lot of people, I have friends who now are like ultra runners and like do all this, because it's like, it can be dangerous at times because it becomes this never ending pursuit of the next thing. And so I think there's a lesson to be learned on that side as well. But, it really kind of sparked my path towards overall personal development and a holistic, I think healthier lifestyle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I liked how you pointed out that a lot of us athletes, whether you're an athlete or not, right? However you were raised, you're raised with some sort of values and you understand to an extent of core principles, but you don't necessarily know what to call them. They're just something that you do, right? For me, it was always like work ethic. Like I was always going to work harder than anybody just because I knew that I could control that. I want you to talk about a little bit about those guiding principles that you've kind of come up with, that maybe if some came from when you were younger or when you were an athlete, and then some that you've maybe developed over time that you teach your clients now.
Yeah. I think, the number one is like, is, honoring yourself and being true to you. And I think that's hard to do a lot of times and to do that, you have to have a congruency with what you say and what you do. Right. So there's kind of layers to it, but I think that like honor and respect for me, that like I believe in myself, because it all starts with you. And I think we often are reluctant to shine a light on our own capabilities or have a little bit of selfishness at times, because we don't want to put ourselves in front of other people. We want to be we're people pleasers. We want to be humble. We want to support others. If you're not, it's why they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first during a plane prep session, because if you're not in a good spot, you can't support and serve others. Like anything, there's a dichotomy imbalance there, but like that's the number one. And then I think the kind of a subtext to that is alignment between what you do and what you say. And one of the things we hear from Ben Newman, who we both work with, is like I have a conversation with your actions. And so if your actions are not in alignment with what you say you want to do, and then that lack of congruency will be a big blocker for you. I think habit creation as kind of a core value, meaning like what do you do every day? Kind of the overused euphemism that's attributed to Nick Saban. The way you do one thing is the way you do anything. I think it's really a valuable thing, because if you're, and this looking, I really believe in when I work with whether it's young athletes, whether it's executives, or who anybody, we don't talk about just sports. We talk about athletic, academic, friends, family. Like those four phases of life. And you have to have this has to be existence across all. It says if you're a great athlete but you're a shitty student, we all know that's not going to work out very well. If you're a great academically or good student but you're a really bad family and friend, like those things are going to leak over. Those areas always work in conjunction, and it's also okay that you might not be able to be great at all of them at all times. So like Olympic athletes don't always have the time to be a great friend all the time because they're really leaning into that athleticism part of it because that's their number one priority. At some point in time, they may have to throttle that back to be a good friend, to be a good parent, a good husband, whatever the case is, and then academics for them may not matter at one point. But think of academics as it pertains to you professionally, financially. That takes different flavors as you grow or get out of athletic career. And I think number one is whatever word you want to use for it, integrity, honesty, like just and that kind of gets back to doing what you say you're going to do. And I'm reading a book right now that was actually recommended by Ben Newman from one of the folks he works with, Drew Hanlon, called Stop Bullshitting Yourself. And it's really something I recommend highly. It has this self audit in there. But if you are lying to yourself about the reasons you're not getting to where you need to get to, you will never get there. And so you have to tear down those excuses, those limiting beliefs, and really and if what you see is factual, meaning like if I can't get to here because of this thing that's in my way, then and it's really true, then or just accept that, like for instance, if I'm not willing to work out hard and eat healthy, I'm never going to get six-pack abs. So maybe six-pack abs just don't matter enough to me, and that's okay. Well, stop pretending like you're going to do that, or that like the only reason that can't happen is because you don't have enough time. It's because you're not willing to invest the effort and the sacrifice to get there. It's not wrong. You're not a bad person because of that. That just is. And so I think having that awareness and self-reflection and honesty and integrity of what reality is and what the puts and takes are, and really maybe lastly is unwillingness to have a victim mentality. I think that characteristic of Jocko Willink refers to it as extreme ownership, that like you don't, it's your responsibility to respond how things happen to you. You own that reaction. You didn't know you didn't control who your parents were, where you grew up. If you get laid off tomorrow, none of that stuff's in your control. How you respond to it is, and that's what matters. And so the unwillingness to be a victim, I think, is a critical characteristic for success.
Yeah, I think everything you touch on is amazing. I know that probably really helps the businesses, the athletes that you work with. And I think the main point I want to talk about is the idea of being true to yourself, right? And also understanding what is truly important to you. Because I think those go hand in hand. Because if you're truly authentically you, which I think with today's world, being authentically you is sometimes hard because we want to be the big person that's on social media, that has the cars, that does the traveling, that does all this stuff. But if you're not being truly yourself, then you're going to feel out of alignment. You're going to feel exhausted. You're going to feel like something's pulling you in a different direction. But then if you're also understanding like those things don't matter to me, but I can be authentically me, that's a huge piece to becoming and finding that next level of you and finding what's important to you. And I want you to touch on that a little bit more of just how being in alignment with yourself and being authentically you can truly get you to that next level.
And I think first doing that, like self-diagnostic of what do you truly want out of life, and and again, not measuring yourself to external factors. And so directionally having an aspiration. So I remember writing down, and this was early, like when I first started reading John Gordon and Ben Newman and those kind of things. I go, I want to, the term influencer was just a thing. So I had written down some objectives of like, I want to be a speaker, I want to be an author, I want to be an influencer. And those are kind of like directional aspirations. Um, but until I defined like, but what does that really mean? Doing the work of reverse engineering, what's the definition of that, and what are the tasks that it takes to get there? That was necessary for me to actually, kind of grow into those aspirational goals and those directional activities. And so, but it was, it also is like, but if I don't know what that means, do I really want it? Does it really matter? And like just being an influencer, like today, this is like 2016. So almost a decade later, that means something like social media influencers is a totally different thing. But back then it was like, you're on the list of influential people. It means you make impact. It means you have a positive influence on a sector of the world. And for me, it was my industry at the time, and it still is, the security and technology industry. And so it's like, I want to be an influence in this industry, meaning that I want to make it better, make people better. And so then I had to figure out what that meant to me and why I cared, or if it does, if it did. And so, but what didn't matter was me looking at, again, at the time, like a Ben Newman, and saying like, all right, I'm aspiring to be that. So like if I'm judging me against him, it's like I'm never going to be, I'll always be a losing proposition. Again, to the marathon example, I'm on mile 2, he's on mile 17. Like how is it even comparable to put me against that? And so I think that's critical to know, what do you really want? And then why do you want it? And really ask, and then what are you willing to invest to get it? And like going through that diagnostic, and then from that last point, you'll know, do you really want it? Because again, back to the six pack ab, if I'm like, I want to get six pack abs. Okay. How do I need to do that? I need to, eat healthy, count my macros, drink water, go to bed by 9 p.m. I'm 43, right? So doing that at my age would take a lot of work. And then by the end of it, I'm going, okay. And then how long will it take me? 9 months. All right. Do I really want six pack abs? Because like that's going to be a lot of work. But if I do, that's what I'm going to have to do. I want to be in President's Club if I'm a salesperson. Okay. What does that mean? All right. Here's what the people in President's Club get. Meaning what the metrics are that need to get there. Okay, what is that diet? 50 cold calls a day. Well, I only have to do 10. Those are my KPIs, but I need to do 50. Like, how much do I want President Club, and how am I willing to do that, right? And so, and then back to the personal identity part. Why do I want that? Is it an ego thing? Is it a recognition thing? Is it a financial thing? Or do I just want to be the best at what I do? So having that, connecting that drive and that purpose, and also like you and I collectively subscribe to the concept of the burn, right? What's that underlying like core passion that drives you? For me, it's my family and my full potential, right? I do everything because, I have my own kind of personal backstory with my family, that drives me, that, I want them to have the best possible opportunities that I didn't have, a life that I want to create for them. And then I want to, I don't want to leave this world with anything left in the fuel tank. That full potential. Ed Milet talks about, for those who don't know, like Ed Milet is a speaker and an author, and kind of a podcaster as well. And you'll hear him talk about this concept of, when I go to heaven, there's a version of me that I'm going to meet who's the perfect, kind of the person who fulfilled all the potential, and I want it to look exactly like me. And that really resonates with me around, there's this optimal version of me at the end of each day. And if you think about it as like a plotted chart, like I want to be above the line, meaning like every day I want to be a little bit better than what was thought to be the best version of myself that day. But if I've never thought about what that looks like, if I haven't defined my best, then I'll never know how I'm doing. And so I think that's where that that identity, that self-awareness, those attributes, those capabilities, and then is it aligned with what I want to be? Like, again, today, like, I'm not an athlete any longer. That's not my identity. Like, my identity is as, a coach, a father, a husband, and a high performer. And so every day my actions have to be in alignment with that identity and the best version of that identity. But you got to do the work to define what that best looks like in all your different areas and then hold yourself accountable to that standard.
I love the defining the actions you have to take, because I think that even myself, I go through this as well of, okay, I want to be a mental performance coach for professional athletes. Okay, well, what do those people do? How do I get there? What is the work that I need to attack each day in order to do that? Which I think goes back to what you talked about a little bit of having standards, of having, okay, well, this is what it takes. If it takes 50 calls for me to be the top salesperson, that's the work I need to go attack if I truly want it. And I think that's, again, figuring out a little bit of reflection on yourself. Is that what you want? If it's not, again, nothing wrong with that, but understand who you are as a person and then attacking that work every single day. Because I think when I think about attacking the work, it's, again, the daily disciplines, the standards that are going to help me get to that next level, to get to that next achievement. Not that because my achievements before aren't good enough, it's because those give me confidence to go attack this next level of me. Because like you said with Ed Milet, you want to be the exact reflection of that person in heaven that maximized everything. And that's why I think about the idea of like an alpha. An alpha for me is every single day you're constantly improving, so that way when things come up, opportunities arise, you are ready for that. You're ready to show up for your family. You're ready to show up for yourself. And it's only through that constant improvement and a constant attacking of work, of standards that are going to get you to the next level, that you're truly going to be able to get there.
And if you're not, you have to stretch yourself for growth, right? So I refer to it, and again, it's more of a athletic or weightlifting, like, but think I call it, time under the bar. And so if you're an athlete of any type, you probably have done the basic Olympic lifts are how we kind of measure, at least in football, right? It was like you squat, you bench press, you deadlift, right? Time under bar. The only way you can get stronger is with more time under the bar. And so when I remember as an eighth grader, the summer after eighth grade, the first high school lifting sessions and going in, and the bar weighs 45 pounds and I could barely squat it. I could barely bench it. I sure as shit couldn't do a clean power clean. And like being so embarrassed, I didn't want to come back. And I don't know if I did come back. Like I was just like, because there was nobody there to say, hey, it's supposed to be this way. Like the first time it's supposed, because you've never done this before. And so there was a couple of things there in retrospect. I didn't have the self-identity. I didn't have the confidence, the belief in myself. And I had nobody telling me this is normal. The first time you try anything, you're going to be bad at it. You got to keep coming back and trying it more and more. And then the more time under the bar you have, the more comfortable you'll get. And then you can add more weight and add more weight and add more weight and do more complicated and complex things and do different lifts and grow into that. But it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes resistance. And then you might get hurt and you got to dial it back. And then you're going to build back up to it, right? And that's why I think that so much, and not everybody's into sports, and I understand that. I've learned more on the courts and fields of competition than I ever have in quote unquote real life, and applied those into my real life, whether that's being competing or coaching. That's where I think some of the greatest lessons in life are learned, because we're keeping score. There's a finite beginning and end, and it's really easy to see improvement. And I know, like, and that's why I think sales is something that people resonate to, because I can see, like, I'm doing the activity or I'm not, I'm getting the output or I'm not, and I'm getting the reward or I'm not. And it's really tangible. And not everything in life is that tangible. Like back when I professionally, I was a security and compliance manager, and really you're measured on the absence of bad things happening. Right?
It's
Like
like
if nothing
specialty.
happens, you did a good job. If bad things happen, you did a bad job, maybe. Or so it was really hard. And so eventually I moved into sales because I was like, I want to get compensated and rewarded for my effort, output, and success. So sales was interesting to me. And then eventually I went into product management, technology development, and other things like that. But still, I could say, I design a product, I bring it to market, people buy it, it works, I win. Right. So it was like my mind, I could get into a flow of an area where I could actually see effort, aptitude, capability, output, and measure it, monitor it, and kind of and have that whole life cycle of effort. And that's why I think coaching and performance coaching and leadership development, because I can see, I worked with a client recently. We started about a year ago, and like we went through the whole diagnosis exercise, his goals and development, re-engineered down to the daily tactic and output level. We worked together for 6 months. He's hitting his going bond. He's like, all right, I think I got it now. I think I'm good. We're gonna like I'm gonna cancel with you and blah blah. He flatlines. So I check in with him, and then we touch base like 3 months later, and he's like, yeah, just like, I can't make it to the next level. I go, well, let's go back to that list. Let's go back to the list of daily, like, when's the last time you worked out? Like, I don't know. It's been, all right. When's the last time you did this? When's the last time? It's like you stopped doing all the work. How, like, why do you think you flatlined? You stopped doing the things you did to get you here. And now you're stalled out because you stopped doing the things every day. And I was like, this is why you brought me on to work with you to do this, because you weren't doing this on your own. Now are you going to do it? And so now he's like, I probably need to get back into this with you, because obviously there's a value that I've seen here. And so not everybody needs somebody working with them to do that. Some people have the capability, to the self accountability, to drive that, to set that standard and adhere to it. But it's always, I mean, everything. There's no secret pills in life. Everything requires work, and it usually is simpler than we think it is. We just overcomplicate it. And then now it's hard, but it's simple, right? Like I already talked about, getting in shape, eat right, hydrate, rest, stay active. Like, I promise you, if you do those 4 things, I don't care about your body type. I don't care about your history. Now, like, major medical issues aside, but for a large swath of the population, if you do those 4 things, you will live longer and you will be healthy. But we don't do that, right? We want to eat bullshit because it tastes good. We don't want to work out. We don't want to be active. We're not willing to do those things because they're hard. It's simple, but it's hard. And I think that's really the math problem you can apply to everything. And again, your willingness to accept the truth and who you really want to be is really what unlocks your capability to apply that math problem to you in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah, the idea when you're talking about how you can take all the things you learn from being an athlete and turn it into real life, right? Because again, 98% of us go on to be something professional, not in sports. I want you to talk a little bit about how that has helped with talking with business organizations, but also your athletic organizations that you work with, how those kind of just overlap in your teachings and why they might overlap.
Absolutely. Because I think the principles are ubiquitous. And so I'll give you kind of 2 examples. I worked with a large entertainment, like sports and entertainment complex a couple years ago with their security leadership team. And the things we talked about and the things that I talk about with high school athletes are the same. And really, it's this process of defining your best, and that could be even aspirational, right? Like, who you are today isn't who you want to be in the future, but what do you have to do today to become the person you want to be? And whether that is, I'm working with a high school athlete who wants to go play Division I football or Division I lacrosse. There's hundreds of people doing that today. So how did they get there? You can Google search or go in Chat GPT and say, what are the things that I need to do to become this? And make a checklist out of it. It's the same thing professionally. If I want to be a high performing team, I think there's well accepted definitions and attributes on what a high performing leader or a high performing team does. So what does that mean in your industry? What does that mean in your company? How do you get from where you are? Like this gentleman that I just referenced that I worked with, he had certain goals and objectives that he wanted, and they were easily diagnosed and defined of like, what is you going to have to do every day, every week, every month to get to that over this, 9-month time horizon. And so those regardless of what your end objectives are and what your goals are, that process is the same. And the delivery of it is what I'll change depending on both the age and the maturity of the individual and the context of whether it's executive, corporate, youth sports, high school, college. It's kind of putting it in a packaging that's going to be more well received for that environment, but the processes, the frameworks, the language, it's all the same.
Yeah. The overlap, I think, is because there's the devil's in the details, right? It's the little things that you're doing every single day, no matter what industry or what, if you're in sports or not, that get you there. So I want to just be able to understand. You talked about with your client that he was killing it, he was crushing it. What is the purpose of a mental performance coach for someone outside of getting them to their goal? What does a mental performance coach bring? I guess I want you to speak on that since you are one. Plus, you also work with Ben a lot and you probably have worked with other mental performance coaches. What is the key to having a mental performance coach in your life?
Well, I think let's take mental performance coach off of it and say, why do we have coaches? So why do we have coaches in any aspect? And a lot of it is to help us unlock our potential. So the reason there's a football coach is because you could just throw 11 guys out there and say, get after it. And maybe they'd have some level of success. Would they have as much success if you have someone who understands their talents and capability and can organize them towards a single mission? So that's for teams. For an individual, it's the same way. Like if I have somebody who can help me, who knows better than I do how to unlock the best potential from me or the most potential from me and has tried and true frameworks and capabilities that can help me shortcut to get me quicker to where I want to be. And so they have the answers to the tests that I'm going to take and they can help me perform better. It's why we have like a personal trainer, right? Like you would say like, well, I want to get in shape and I want to get in shape faster and better than I can do on my own. I'm going to hire a personal trainer because that's what they do and it's what they do best. With a performance coach or leadership development coach, they have more time under the bar and can help me move faster and more intentionally with sustained success and process by using that framework. So anybody can like pick up a book and read a book and go, okay, yes, I can get better tomorrow. And then but when you have someone who can work with you and put together, an intentional performance plan for success that also has been used, in our cases, for me and you, Dom, like tens of thousands of times, because not only are we, because this isn't just what you and I have done, but we're taking what's been learned by other people who work with us and then kind of factoring it with what we do and reapplying it. So these aren't just like tools that we, bought off the internet yesterday that somebody pulled out of thin air. These are things that have been applied both corporate and athletically for almost 2 decades now that then we used ourselves, which provided success, which now we can then hand off to others to help them find their next level. And so, that you don't know until you know. And then, I would say this, that there's a reason why the best performance coaches still have performance coaches because they know it's a never finished type of process that you never stop learning and you can always get better. And the second I stop working on myself, I don't deserve to help others, in my opinion, because if I'm not getting better, one, they're all catching up. And so if I'm not getting better, what value do I bring to them? So that they ultimately are going to give me their hard-earned money to give them something, right? It's an exchange of value. So they feel like I'm solving a pain for them that's significant enough that they will invest in that relief of that pain or that development. And so that's what I have to bring. And that's the value that I create, is that I help you get closer to the goals and aspirations, but you got to be open to, to receiving that. And then doing it over and over again every day. So again, to kind of answer that first question down which you posed, it's who the professional optimizer, the person who can get you that their expertise is your high performance.
Yeah. I mean, I think about Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, like they all have coaches. We don't think that coaches in sport is a weird thing for the greatest players of all time. But I think there's a stigma or like a weird thought of like, well, why do I need a coach? I'm good enough, or I'm good enough, right? It's that good enough mentality. But I think it's what you talked about is it optimizes you to get to where that next level is. It optimizes you to be able to find maybe the things that you can't see in yourself that need worked on, or that maybe just need a little tweak to be better. Right. And that's where you bring in a coach to help you be your very best. And so that's why I wanted you to kind of talk about how you maybe have helped other people by tweaking maybe their mindset or some of that internal resistance or those limiting beliefs that they might have had initially. But because you talked to them, learned their goals, learned who they were as a person, started to care for them, you were able to help them with those limiting beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, it's all results driven, right? So when someone starts getting results, then the belief comes right behind it. And so when you can show them, one, I always ask, like, my mandatory minimum is 90 days because like that's how long it takes. So uh, I think well-known research and study when it comes to habit development, 66 to 75 days is the typical average for creating new habits or removing negative habits. So I need beyond that a little bit at 90 days. So is when you can get habits in and start seeing results. So that's the commitment, right? And so there's a kind of a screening process of like, are you the kind of person who is going to actually lock in and do this? This isn't a yo-yo diet. This isn't a fad. This is a commitment to self-improvement and development and your next level. So that's kind of the first lens. And then once you're in that, and so once that's in there and you're committed, and then you can start seeing these results. And again, it's not, we're getting down very precise to what are you focusing on? What are your 2 to 3 goals that you want to get at? And how are we going to, and so when you can really get it down to like, look, it's simple, but it's hard work. But all I'm asking you to do is every week or every day do these things. And then at the end of the week, you're gonna fill out a scorecard. And then when we meet every other week, which is a typical cadence I have with my clients, we're gonna talk about it. And the facts don't lie. And so if you're not putting in the work, you're not gonna get the results, then you and I are gonna have an uncomfortable conversation, or if you are, and it's too easy, then we're gonna ratchet it up. And then we're going to course correct throughout that 90 days. And after that 90 days, you're going, wow, look, I like the progress that I've made. And so the commitment, and I just know after doing this as long as I have that it works. And so if you're willing to put in the effort, time to do the work, you're going to see the results. And then it's just compounding interest on how quick and fast you can go from there. What typically happens is at that 6-month mark, people are like, I got it now. I don't need you anymore. And then they'll backslide, or sometimes they'll take it and they'll run with it and they'll become self kind of autonomous with it. And then maybe they'll come back and be like, hey, I need more help because I got 2x goals, but now I want 10x goals. And so I need some more help getting to this next tier that I'm trying to get into. But again, you talked about that mindset. It's the acceptance for help that someone else may know better than you. And that if you let go of your limiting beliefs and self-held truths of like what is and isn't, and let somebody hand you the script to say, just try this and keep applying it day after day with that intentionality, you're going to get it's really hard not to get the results if you're actually doing the work.
I think I like where you touched on of when you start doing the work, you start seeing the results, right? And then the next part is then you start getting those beliefs put in place of because you're remembering all the hard things you've done. You're remembering all the successes you've had. So those limiting beliefs kind of fade away. Now, does there mean that there won't ever be any more limiting beliefs? No. That's also why you have a coach to kind of keep pointing out, hey, remember you did these things? Yeah, we that's still you. Let's just keep going. Now, are there people ahead of you? For sure, but we're all on a different path. We're all on a different journey. And some of us started early. Some of us are just starting. Some of us have been doing this for years, like Ben. So it's the idea of having a coach that can show you the path, help remind you of where you came from, and then still keep helping you get to that next level of your performance. And I think that for me, that's been a huge part of working with Ben, talking with you when we have our next level coaches summits of the things that we can put in place to help people and do this for them. And again, it's, at the end of the day, do I want to get paid? For sure. But why do I want to get paid? So I can help more people. So I can be more impactful, not just so that I can get paid, but so I can make impact with others and help them out. And I would probably say that you agree with that. It's about
100%.
the
Yeah.
impact.
It has near to, I mean, still more of the work that I do, and I know you do too, is no cost pro bono work. I work majority of my effort and time. But before earlier today, I just got off the phone with another high school lacrosse team that I used to coach for. That I used to coach the head coach now when he was in college. I was his coach. Now he's a head coach, and he brings me in to talk to his players and do some mindset and leadership work with his team. And I don't charge. He's like a brother to me. And so that's where I still majority of my time is spent doing that kind of work, giving back. And really, honestly, the payment part is that one day I hope that I could do nothing but this. And so to support, a family of six and a mortgage and all that, there has to be some financial incentive about that. But that's not the driving factor. Is that if I could do nothing but this, then I just think about the outsized impact that I could have, even in just like the speaking, the coaching, and both just athletic coaching and then performance coaching that I've done over the last 15 to 20 years. I know that I've impacted tens of thousands of lives because I know that because the kids who are now adults who now have children tell me that. And they still, again, like this young man who is a father to three who recites back to me things that I told him when I was his coach, his college lacrosse coach. You had impact there, and so that's the performance metric for me is a is maximum amount of positive impact and a living legacy. Because like I want to have legacy today. I want people to that I touch who then impact others and have that like virtuous sphere of influence be as big as possible. And because I know 100 years after, no matter, there's like 10 people in this world that like people will remember 200 years from now. Right. So like, I don't want on my tombstone, the most significant piece is the dash. The start date and the end date are almost relevant. It's that dash and what I do during that time while I'm here and the impact and legacy that I have. So maybe one person that I influence, maybe they'll be the next Albert Einstein. Maybe they'll be the next Maya Angelou. I don't really care for that in my own self because that's not what drives me. It's enabling the positive impact for as many people as possible. And that's not a money thing. Financial capability would only greatly enable that to be happening more of my time than it is today.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you know. It's a lot of pro bono work, but it's the impact actually is so rewarding that I want to keep doing it. And again, it's the idea of if I can impact more, it'd be because I have more money so I can fully devote all my time to this. But like you said, the dash, that's what it's all about. And that's also why I created Alpha Pack, because it was like, if I could just influence two people, let's just start with the smallest mark possible. And they could influence two people, and then they could influence two people. That's what I'm here for. Just like I call it the pyramid scheme that benefits the world because I don't get any benefit out of it. But hopefully we can just impact everybody. And that's be living the legacy now. Living the legacy now that just constantly expands, and we're making the world a better place by doing it. And I think for both of us, we truly love coaching, which is why I'm going to put all your information, your podcast, all that stuff down in the description so people can get a hold of you. But before we wrap, I wanted to give you a chance. Floor is yours. Give a piece of advice to your younger self, piece of advice to the audience, anything that you want to wrap with that you think is important.
I think the most important thing that my younger self would have benefited from is that mistakes are natural and failure is not fatal, and that it's part of the growth process. And don't be afraid to take calculated risks, and that's where getting uncomfortable is where growth and great things occur. And that can be and as a young person, as a young athlete, specifically, but as a young person anywhere, like, we all dream about being the star quarterback, but we're afraid to step up and throw the pass or put ourselves in that position or really understand the hard work that it would take to get that. You love the idea of it, but you're uncomfortable with taking on the work that is required. And so I think embracing hard work as a path towards excellence and towards your dreams is really that's there's no hacks in life, but that's the closest thing to it is hard work, and really understanding how to apply that across all phases of your life, family, friends, professional, athletic, or academically, and just how much of a unbelievable unlock that is for your full potential.
Absolutely. Attack the work every single day,
Mm-hmm.
every damn day, as Ben says. Well, I appreciate you joining. We'll have you back. I gotta have you back because like everybody, I got a million more questions, a million more things to pull from that brain of yours to keep giving knowledge and impacting more people. So definitely will have to have you back. So I appreciate you joining though.
Anytime, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to Leading the Pack. I hope you learned a lot from how John is able to coach others, impact others, bring different mindsets, kind of help them turn their mindset into their ultimate weapon and become the alphas of their life, even though he may not use that terminology, but he helps them get to the next level. Like I said, John's information is down in the description. So if you need to reach out to him, you want him to coach you because he can help you get to that next level, please do. It'll be down there. His podcast will be down there so you can at least listen to what he talks about as well. Don't forget to like and leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode, and share this podcast with someone who's ready to lead their pack and level up as well. Like I said before, blessed to be surrounded by so many great high performers, mentors, and friends like John. So I got a bunch more lined up. But until next time, stay hungry, keep leading your pack. Now go attack the work.